I'm meeting with Kristi Robles, and she's a Master of Social Work and licensed clinical social worker. And we're going to talk today about a question that is somewhat controversial and comes up quite a bit in a divorce or child custody situation, and that is, do you discuss the underlying litigation in the divorce or child custody case with children? And if the answer is no, what are the situations where that's inappropriate? But what are also the times when it is appropriate? So I'll start with you. Before we go any further, however, for those that are impressed or want to deal with you more, would you please give them your contact information?
I believe the best way to contact me would be my professional bio website, which would be KristiRobles.com, and that's just KristiRobles.com.
Excellent. All right. So we talked a little bit, but not very much, because we wanted this to be something that wasn't scripted or didn't sound rehearsed, but we thought we'd talk about, there's this question, there's different sides of this where people say you should never discuss, I mean literally never discuss anything about a divorce or child custody case with the kids who are the subject of the case, and then others, which I'll admit, myself included, that think, I understand the good intention behind it, but I think it's some of the worst advice you could give. So where do you fall on that? And let's do that by talking about age ranges, okay?
Well, first, I think it's important to remember that there's a reason children don't get married, and they're not married until they're legally adults usually, because developmentally they're not capable of understanding relationship dynamics, and it's therefore wouldn't make sense for them to receive information that they wouldn't be capable of internalizing and understanding, which marital problems fall within that range for the most part. If your child is 15, 16, 17, 18, the information I would provide them would be a lot different than if they were 3, 4, 5 to 10. And it's okay that they know relationships don't work out sometimes. A part of a relationship that would not be appropriate, for example, for them to know about their parents is that your father sleeps around, because then that's going to have potential negative effects and sexualizes their father in their mind, which I don't think a parent would want. But developmentally, how would they understand that when they can't really understand relationships and dynamics in general? So I would go based on their age and just provide the necessary information, but not specifics or details.
Let's talk then about, let's assume that you have a child who is asking age inappropriate questions, either because they've been planted in the mind of that child by somebody, or perhaps a well-meaning neighbor or church member or something brought it up. So it's something, how would you give some general advice about parents who should try to gently drop the subject because it's simply not appropriate to discuss at all?
Well, I would ask them questions, but very innocently, like, oh, why do you ask that? Like, where did that come from? What are your worries? Like, what are your concerns? So that you can see where it's coming from. It's not always coming from the same place maybe the parent's fear is.
That's a good point. You might think, oh, your mom put you up to that, only to find out, no, it didn't. And then fly off the handle for no good reason.
Or it could be like something they saw on TV about a taboo subject, and they're curious, and so it's okay to kind of have a conversation about it, but ask them where they're coming from first, and maybe find out what they really need to know and why, and answer that question as opposed to maybe the specific question about their mother or their father.
Okay. What about a child who, in your opinion, is asking an age-appropriate question? So let's assume that you have a 16-year-old, and we happen to know the 16-year-old does understand what sexual intercourse is, and that it's a normal part of life and that sort of thing, but also understands what infidelity is, and then says, Dad, Mom, are you having an affair? What do you think would be an appropriate way to handle that? And let's even qualify it more. And the child is sincere. There's no ulterior motive. It's something the child really wants to know about.
Well, I think it's hard to answer that question because it's so subjective.
Sure, yeah. And I agree. So just kind of, you can fill in whatever hypotheticals you want just to give someone kind of a better idea of what you think would be appropriate under specific circumstances.
In one situation where, let's say, everybody knows for whatever reason I wouldn't want to be the kid to have to find out, like, get the information that everybody knows from other people. So I would still provide the truth, but I would have that truth be agreed upon as much as possible between the parents, and where there's not a blame or you're not demonizing one person or the other.
Now, let me ask this, not because I have strong opinions on it, but let's just, if I can play devil's advocate, for lack of a better word. What if you are the betrayed spouse? So and you've been good, and you're waiting for the proper time, and you don't want to harm the children, and you don't want to harm your husband or wife. I guess it's 2015, but we'll imagine that this is a heterosexual union in this situation, because that's the overwhelming majority.
Okay.
So what do you think would be appropriate? So you've got this 16-year-old child that comes to you, and let's say that this has been something that's been pretty hush-hush. You were surprised to learn about the affair. And let's assume that for whatever reasons you acted quite quickly and immediately filed for divorce, so there hasn't been a whole lot of time. There's been, I mean, whether you still live together or not, you are welcome to describe whatever your situation is. But then kind of tell me how you think that should unfold. And I'd be more than happy to play the role of that 16-year-old child, and let's try that, okay?
Okay.
So what I've come to you is I've said, hey, I know that you and Dad are getting a divorce. Did Dad have an affair?
Well, I would probably do that thing that seems therapy. Well, Eric, why do you ask that? That's a big question.
Come on, Mom. I mean, because I know that's why a lot of people get divorced, and I heard that from, let's see, who would be the person? Well, okay, so of course it would be Grandma or Grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandma told me that that's why you're getting a divorce. Well, she didn't come right out and say it, but she let it slip. I was actually over at her house mowing the lawn like I do, and I heard her on the phone, and I don't think she knew I could hear, and I heard her mentioning Dad had an affair.
You know, Eric, I'm sorry that that's something you heard from Grandma. There's a lot of things that are involved. Your father and I haven't been getting along for a while, and being married is tough, and I love your father. I got married, and I believe he got married because he loved me. And I'm not sure how to explain it in a way that our son could understand the situation. But I want you to know that we both love you and we want what's best for you, and that that stuff, the details of what happened to me aren't important, and so I don't want them to be important to you. I want you to love your father, and I want you to love your mom. So I don't want to go over the specifics with you, because I don't think that would be an appropriate thing for a mom to do with her son. Well,
I appreciate that, but I just kind of feel like I'm being left in the dark. I don't want to get mad at anybody. I just want to know the truth. I just want to know what's going on.
Yeah, I would feel in the dark too. I would feel in the dark. And you are a little bit that way. The truth is that our relationship just hasn't worked out. And sometimes relationships don't. Not every relationship is permanent. And it's really hard to make a relationship permanent. Most are not going to be in our lives. We go into a marriage believing they will be because we love that person, we choose to, but that doesn't mean everything is going to work out and be perfect and we can stay together, and that's just what's happened here.
Well, if you're not going to tell me, I'm going to go and talk to Dad myself. I'm sorry, I don't want to upset you, but I want to know what happened. Yeah. It's important to me. I'm a part of this family too, and I'm old enough to understand, and I'm old enough I deserve this.
You are old enough, and you do deserve to understand.
So just let me know what happened. I get the impression that you're not telling me something because you don't want me to know.
There's a lot of things I'm not telling you, but it's not because I don't want you to know, it's because I love you.
Well, I'd rather that you tell me this, because I just feel like you're treating me like a little baby, and I'm not a little baby, and, you know, my friends know that something weird's going on. I'm not going to go around and blab about it, but, I mean, you don't deserve that if Dad did that to you, and I want to know. And I'm not going to go and I'm not going to take it out on Dad, but I just need to know. I need to know what's going on. I need to know why this happened.
Eric, I deserve the best, you're right. Your dad deserves the best, and you deserve the best.
Not if he stepped out on you, Mom.
I wouldn't be giving you the best by giving you details about a relationship that would not be something you could really understand at this point. If it was my parents, it would be really hard to understand the dynamics of their marriage. And I would want to love them both, and that's what I want for you, so that's what I'm giving you.
Yeah. Now, was that hard for you to do if you put yourself in that position, or how did you?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah, especially if you're the injured person. The only way to kind of, I think, stay focused on not getting involved because you love your son so much or your child, you want to give them what they are telling you they need, but a teenager doesn't always know what's best for them. They're not always going to know what they need. And so that's why it's important that the parent keep that in mind, that not that the teen is lying. I want to know, I need to know, I have the right to know. That's
Yeah.
why I'm saying, like,
That's a sincere,
yeah, like,
that,
yeah.
that teenager really believes
Right,
that.
Of course. But it's up to me to decide really what's best for that teen and my child. And that's my right, but also my burden. So the way I'm going to do that is to keep that in mind in the bigger picture, not what I want or not what I feel, but what's best for my child. And I think that's one of the hardest things for parents to do.
When you talk to children who are dealing with a divorce or a child custody dispute, what are the things that you find come as a surprise to the parents? I'm sure the parents, if they have their kids in counseling, have certain expectations and beliefs. What expectations and beliefs are accurate, and what are the things that most parents are completely have a blind spot on?
That one's actually easy to answer. I get a lot of children who come into therapy, or parents who bring their children in, let's say, after a divorce or a separation or just marital problems in general, and they want to know what's wrong with their child or just how to help their child. And I hate to say, I don't ever use like 100% of the time, but I'm going to use it today. 100% of the time, what I've seen is that generally the child's okay, but the biggest concern of the child, and studies actually support this, is they're worried about their parents. Their number one worry and stressor and focus is that they're worried about their parents, their mom or their dad. And that's what's having the biggest effect on their behavior or thoughts or mental or emotional stability, and the parents don't realize that.
What kind of worries let's assume that these are kids 12 years old, give or take 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of worries is it? Is what, mommy or daddy is always crying and I'm worried, or mommy and daddy are never around, or like, what kind of worries do kids express?
Just that their parent's not okay, their parent's sad, they can see that their parent is hurt or angry, and they don't know how to handle that because there's nothing they can do. And so even through a divorce, I think it's probably one of the toughest, most traumatic things an adult can go through. It's important to put on a brave face, so to speak, and be your best, strongest self while your child is present, because if adults have a hard time handling a divorce, think about how hard a divorce would be for a 12-year-old, and they experience what you're experiencing.
Without having any advanced knowledge.
And no choice.
Yeah, no
like
choice.
they can't choose. They're helpless, and they have no control over it. And so, as honest as I like parents to be, that's why I ask them to maintain a little bit of a distance when it comes to that information, because children are so worried about this parent that's their biggest, I would say, obstacle or stressor. And so the parents, at least when the children are there, need to really do the best they can, despite how hard it is, to present a strong front, or that they're going to be okay, be reassuring, because that's what the kid's going to believe. They're going to believe, if they see you're okay, they're going to believe that they and their life are going to be okay.
Is it worth faking it?
Yes.
For the sake of the children?
Yes. Not faking a marriage necessarily,
right.
But faking your ability, like for periods of time, that if it feels like you're faking it, I believe it's accurate. You're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what choice do you have? But not displaying it as if you're by yourself and alone and in pain and suffering while your child is present. So if that's called faking it.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of parents lean on their children unfairly, or do most parents not do that?
I would say most do unintentionally.
Most do,
and
but
unknowingly.
unintentionally.
Yes, I don't think most of the time it's not intentional. Occasionally it is. Those
Sure.
are the ones that hurt me a little bit when it's,
How do parents unintentionally burden their children?
well, because they're just hurting. You know,
Okay.
they're suffering, and so maybe they're not used to needing to or having to maybe cover their emotional situation, feelings, or experience. And so pain is, some people are used to masking it and some people are not. And divorce is, I think, that one of the most painful things people go through.
Let's go slightly on a tangent here, and so because I kind of agree. I'm not a mental health professional, but I think that there should be an element of you're not being insincere. You're just
Right.
shielding or protecting kids.
Right.
What are some good ways to shield kids so even though you feel miserable inside,
Yeah.
what are a couple of things parents could do so they're not going to end up putting a bullet in their head because they just internalize too much, or they get really angry, or they get so drunk or so high or something. So what could they do to kind of help deal with this in a healthy way so that the kids are protected but they're not just consuming all the poison?
Well, there's a lot of ways. I could say therapy and getting advice on that.
Well, let me tell you something too. I used to think therapy was kind of overused. I thought it was an easy out. It was thrown around a lot. Well, hey, if there's a problem, let's go
Yeah.
order some therapy. That way, I often felt courts were like, good, nobody can blame me. I recommended therapy. And so I had a kind of a bad taste in my mouth.
Me too.
Yeah. Did you really? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
my early self, I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of weird. Yeah.
that doesn't mean to say that I still think there are sometimes when people casually recommend therapy so
Yeah.
that they can take an easy out. But good therapy I've seen do some wonderful things. So therapy would be one. Real briefly, I don't want to go to therapy because then that means I'm crazy.
Yeah. I get that a lot.
Yeah.
I've worked in various settings. I've worked in the more intense ones like the psychiatric and the residential. I've worked in the intensive outpatient. Those are the higher levels. And now I own a private practice that's outpatient. And everyone's normal. Those are I don't say those are the normal people, but that's the lowest level of care. It's like going to your primary doctor for a physical. But if we're taking care of our body, which hopefully we are, at least a lot of the time, it only makes sense to take care of our mind if we have an injury. And so we would consider it unintelligent to, if we maybe broke our leg, to say I don't need to go to the doctor, it'll heal fine, and then limp around and suffer.
It will heal.
Yeah, it'll
It'll take a lot longer.
very painfully,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we might not walk very good for a period of time.
Or if ever.
Yeah, so that's not that it's not true, but there was more of a stigma. That it's getting a little bit better now that it's an emotional injury, and the problem with not acknowledging that is that they're a lot more severe than physical ones. And so just like if I had a big gash on my leg, I may go get stitches to help it heal better. That's just what outpatient therapy is.
You're not being weak.
Right.
You're not demanding
No.
that your body heal itself with no assistance.
Right.
You're just being wise.
Yeah.
I think that's a great. I agree with you. Not that anyone's watching for me, but that is a good thing because that's what I came to see. It's like, look,
Yeah.
you can go to a therapist to avoid responsibility for problems
Yeah.
and try to substitute therapy for something you need to do yourself, but you can also do it to help yourself.
Oh, and even if you're going selfishly, like,
Yeah.
you might get something out of it.
Mhm.
Like, it's not going to hurt you.
So, what else can people do to present a more cheerful face to their kids, but yet not just be the ones who bear all? What else can parents do so they don't bear all the burdens, all the emotional and psychological burdens?
Well, if they're going through a time like this and they're struggling emotionally, and since we're not robots and we do have feelings, that to allow that to be okay. If I'm with my children and I have a weak moment, I don't know, maybe something common nowadays, I see a Facebook post about my husband's new girlfriend, and it hurts, and so and I I'm not bad-mouthing my husband about it, but maybe I'm crying a little bit or I'm suffering, and my child sees me, and we're people, that's going to happen, but it's okay to teach children that, you know what, people hurt sometimes. Like, sometimes I'm sad, sometimes things hurt me. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be okay. Like, kind of normalizing it as opposed to, I'm hurting, now I'm going to die. Not taking it from one extreme, like one feeling to an extreme. It's just hurting, healing, happiness, sadness is a part of life, and accepting it for what it is as opposed to having it mean something horrible. It's just something that happens.
Do you see parents bringing kids to therapists so that they can win Mom or Dad of the Year and have the court pat them on the head and have them win?
I get...
you get that a lot? Do you get it at all? Do you get it half and half? I was just kind of curious.
I would say I get calls on occasion where someone will say to me, or say they need an evaluation done to prove, of their kids, and then to prove that their ex is a horrible person and shouldn't see the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tell them I can't do that.
Why not?
Well, because especially if I never meet the ex, like I don't, that's not my job to prove people are horrible people.
Yeah, but I can tell you all the bad things that have happened.
Yes, I'm sure you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. My job is to provide emotional support and to help you get to a better place. And if there's anything I can do or say to help you, that's what I want to do. But I can't give you and won't give you ammunition, because that would be more damaging. But I will support you in every way possible emotionally. And so
You see parents take their children to therapy just so that they feel like they've crossed that T and dotted that I?
Occasionally, like I think when I went into therapy several years ago, I thought that would be maybe a more common. I was a little bit more afraid of it because I was afraid that parents would want me to be that. For the most part, I would say 90-something% of the time, they are good people who are worried about their kids. And that's so, I think their motives, regardless of what's going on or maybe some mistakes they're making, their motives are really good. It's just, it's the rare occasion that maybe gives the bad rep to that.
What are the craziest misconceptions people have about therapy for children in a child custody dispute?
The craziest misconceptions.
Most unrealistic that you see that parents might have?
Oh, well, maybe like absent something like very extreme, like severe child sexual, physical abuse and emotional abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Absent something extremely severe. So disclaimer, absent that, I think the assumption or the craziest thought is that the child is better off without that other person. They love them. They want to love them. And there is room to love two parents or four parents or however many. That's a good thing. And so, again, absent the extremes, even though there's ups and downs and difficulties and there's disagreements, it's still positive to have more people in their life that love them. So how can we make this work?
Anything else that people... I guess one thing I see a lot of times is some people think I can defer some of my parental obligations to the therapist,
yes,
or to the church, or to the school,
yeah,
or things like that. So do you see that happening? I'm not saying I know it. What I just
yeah, it's
I don't
always
know.
intentional. Yeah, no, that's been one of the hard parts for me because I have a soft spot for kids. I have to really kind of remember that. It's one of my things when I do therapy, that I'm very protective of children. And so even though parents come in with really good intentions, I know that I really don't have control over their situation or their children.
Mm-hmm.
So if they bring their kids in and maybe there's something parents are doing that is not good for their kids and they want me to fix it, But I can't do that. If I could, I want to, but I can't. And so that's, I guess, one of my bigger frustrations. But I'm also I'm understanding that most of the time they may not understand that. So I just talk with the parents about it, and I just say, this is how I would like to help. I would like to meet with you, like you and your child, and all of us, because I think that will help you the most. I don't want to waste your time or money.
So that was the next question. I mean, generally, is it good to, if children are dealing with some struggles in divorce and child custody, is it better to meet with the entire family exclusively? Is it better to meet with just the children exclusively? Is it good to meet with parents and children apart, or is it kind of a case-by-case basis as to how much involvement there should be and who's involved?
It's usually, broadly, it's a case-by-case basis, but I don't think I've ever, again, maybe besides the extremes, I don't think I've ever met with a child where I thought, oh, it's a good idea their parents aren't involved. Like I've seen the best results, which almost to my surprise, over and over and over again when the parents are a big part of it, and some of the parents are really into it, like they want to be there. Other parents just want to drop their kids off.
What's a big part mean? Like, describe what that is in the therapeutic
They're just
scheme
at the
of things.
sessions. I mean,
Mhm.
they don't have to move mountains, just be there, you know.
Now, again, I think most viewers are smart enough to understand that everybody's situation can be different. But how long will you see a child in therapy when there isn't, like you say, extreme situations of violence or abuse or something like that, just parents not getting along? And I don't know, I mean, you may have like a profile of the average divorcing couple, like their ethnicity, their age, their demographics, and all that kind of stuff. If you want to share that, go right ahead. But especially in the context of explaining it, like, is this something that goes on for weeks, for months, for years? In general, what do you think people can expect? Because I know a lot of people are going to think, I don't have very good insurance, if any, or I really want to help, and I'm at my wit's end. So what can I expect the outlay is going to be? Not because I'm a tightwad, but just because I got a budget for this.
I'm very empathetic to medical costs. Before the client comes in, I always check their insurance first, and they will get written in writing information about how much it's going to cost them out of pocket, if anything, or what their copayment is or what their deductible is, only because I don't want people victimized by the health insurance system. So I definitely agree with that. But also I understand, I actually get that a lot, people asking, well, how long is this going to take, or how much do we need to do? And I get the feeling, and I don't know if this is accurate, that they might, either they've been told or they have the concern that there's a requirement of time or commitment level. But
I'll tell you why. Because what they're afraid of is that, like, well, if I'm going to get dinged in court for not going for the requisite 8 weeks, then I don't want to stop after 6 when everything seems to be good and then get punished for not going.
Well, and that's why
By the way, there's no such thing as a requisite 8 weeks, folks. There's no such thing.
yeah, I was going to say, that's a new number. I just tell them that I work for them. I want to help them. If they show up one time, I want to help them and be them for them one time. If they want to be there for 10 years, I don't know that I would think that they need 10 years, but I leave it up to them 100%.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because a lot of people might think, oh, well, why would you ever want to quit? You'll make more money the longer that you tell me that my kids are screwed up.
I don't believe in that.
Are there therapists who do? I know there are lousy lawyers who will keep a case going and going and going, or at least do nothing to stop it. Are there therapists that will allow therapy to go on forever? Because I was thinking, if I were a therapist, I could easily justify that by saying, well, at worst, it's not doing any harm. So
I've heard that from people. Like, I have my own practice, so I do my own thing, kind of create my own belief system on what I think is good practice. But I've heard that, but I don't know. But I also, I think it's disempowering to create a dependence on myself. I'm also, perhaps, maybe to my disadvantage business-wise, but I'm also a problem solver. So I want to help them get situations resolved or taken care of, or help them feel better sooner than later. And it's maybe a flaw business-wise because I don't like to drag things out forever. My general, and this is not a requirement, but my general hesitant plan is maybe 3 months, but that could be every week or every other week, or it could be one week. It doesn't matter to me, but then on that, after that, I just say, this is an idea, and then you're welcome to come along after that or not. But either way, it's a win. Like, it's a win for me because it's what works for you. That's what works for me.
Let me end on something of a sour note, and then maybe we can do some. Do you ever get people wanting you to come and testify?
Yes.
At their court? And now, let me tell you what my experience is. It seems that the mental health professionals would rather have their fingernails torn out than testify in court.
Yes.
And I think I've got some ideas as to why, but could you tell us what your understanding, whether it be you personally or generally, what is it about coming to court and getting involved in the case that mental health professionals don't like?
Well, I'll speak for me personally because I don't know that this is, I think
Sure,
sometimes
that's
this
just
is
fine.
true and sometimes for other people it's not, but I am happy about the fact that I'm not a police officer. I don't need to know the truth. I don't look for it. I'm not a detective. I'm not researching all of the angles to catch people in lies. That's not my job. My job is to be there for somebody emotionally and help them get to a better place and help them reach their goals. And therefore, testifying in court, for example, which I've done or been deposed, is not based on, oh, I know this is a fact and this is a fact. I'm not there. Like, I don't live their life. I'm not in their house. But that's fine with me. I don't need to control it. So if there's a deposition and they want facts, I only know how to advocate for my client based on how they're feeling and where they're at emotionally. But I'm not a truth finder. And so if my client is, my version of reality is theirs, which is fine with me though. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, you don't need
Right.
to know everything. You can find out after the fact that you didn't have all the, you
Yeah.
have all the information, and that's.
It's not an ego thing. It doesn't,
Right.
like, that's
And-
not my
and
job.
Not an ego thing, not only that, but I don't need it
Right.
to be effective.
Right. I can still help them.
I can still help. What about confidentiality and things like that? I mean, if you're counseling the children, are the parents entitled to all the information about what's going on?
They are.
Yeah.
I
Is that the kind of stuff you've been deposed about, where it's like, tell us about what happened with the children, and then here you've got to, do you feel bad about that? Do you feel like, even though you're doing what the law requires, do you ever feel like, I really wish I could keep this between the kids and me, or do you feel like, no, I see this as part of the job, or how do you feel about that?
if I would feel awful. I mean, I want to keep people's confidence. I have to be a legal and ethical provider, so I don't feel good about it, but I also care about the child more than I care about my own feelings about trying to keep their secrets. And so most of the time, I can't think of the time off the top of my head, it wouldn't be this case, but most of the time it's stuff that the parents really should be aware of, or I would think would help them feel better or be better parents, because it's information they don't have that's vital. And it's hard to share that. I don't lie to the parents, and I don't necessarily, if I'm working with a child, go, oh, here's what we talked about. But if the parents ask me, then I'll say something. But because I want what's best for the child, not because I want to really spill all the secrets. But secrets are generally, for children, actually not, they've never yet been as bad or as big as the parents assume.
You ever see parents retaliate against kids for what they say and do in
I know.
therapy? And there's really nothing more to say on that subject, is there? Unless there's.
I feel like then the relationship with me and that child is damaged. But I can't. I have no control over that, and it's sad. That's why it's one of the dynamics. It's the hardest for me because I care about the child being okay, but I have to go home every night knowing there's only so much I can do.
When I think about things I wish I could change about people generally. I think that it would be that clients overshare,
Yeah.
thinking that they're going
Yeah.
to.
With good intention, maybe.
Yeah. What's the thing that you wish that what would you call them? Clients, patients?
I think I call them clients.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's the one thing that you wish that they would not do, that they just do too often?
What is divorce or just in general?
In general. What is it that people that come to therapy for whatever reason, or counseling, what is it the thing that they, what's the thing, it's like, I really have to do a lot of work to overcome this, and it doesn't do them any good, and I don't know where this comes from, but I wish they wouldn't do X. What would that be?
Probably two things. Bad mouthing the other spouse, because whether they stay together or there's a divorce, then it's awkward, for the child. So bad mouthing the child's other parent, or they're kind of putting the adult worries in the mind of a child. A big one is something like money. Again, developmentally, a child they're not ready to have a budget and have a job and pay all their bills. And so whatever the consistent stressor or worry is talking about it and worrying about it or making it a point. I mean, it's like a child trying to emotionally handle the stressors of being an adult at 10 years old, and they're freaking out. It looks different in a kid, maybe. Maybe they have anger, or maybe they have anxiety, or maybe they're, just acting out, but they're not, because they're not capable of handling that kind of stuff.
If you have children that are your clients and they disclose physical, and I'll include in that sexual abuse, or neglect, such as we never get any food,
Mm-hmm.
or there's no heat or electricity, do you have to report that?
That's been very rare. Maybe unfortunately, because usually by the time I see them, it's been reported, and that's why they're in therapy, if that's the case.
Okay.
But and maybe that's because I'm in private practice as opposed to a government sector. But
If a child said, whatever that leads you to say, oh, this child's been sexually abused, and there really is no doubt.
mm-hmm.
And then we're going to leave out the idea of I was coached or something like that. Do you
Right.
have to report that?
Yes, first I have to kind of distinguish if it's been reported, and if it was by a parent or by someone else, like who the abuser was.
Mhm.
If it wasn't one of the parents, then I would take on the responsibility of talking with the parents first and telling them. Like, I don't generally have secret, like, oh, they're gonna tell me this, I'm gonna go get,
I'll wish,
The
bye,
nat-
see you next week, and then get on the
yeah,
phone.
no, it's, I talk to them, I say, this is important, please come in.
What if it's a disclosure that, and I hate doing this because it's such a tired, hackneyed thing, but I'll do it anyway. So it's like, there's a disclosure that daddy sexually abused a child.
Mhm.
And would you talk to both parents about that?
No, I would, who discloses it?
The child does. Like I said,
Okay.
the child
It's
does.
themselves.
And you've never, and as far as you're aware, this is the first time it's ever been disclosed. Would you go talk to both parents if you're convinced that it's credible?
Well, I'd ask a lot of questions to the child, like, oh,
Right.
what is
I'm assuming you've gotten past all that and you're like, you know what, I really do think this has happened. I mean, this child leaves nothing to the imagination. I can see that this has never been disclosed before. This comes as a bit of a surprise to me. Would you discuss that with the parents, or would you report it and then discuss it, or would you report it and then say, I never want to see you again? What would happen?
It might be a case-by-case basis. If the parents, are they married, are they divorced, like kind of like if they're married, for example, I would probably bring them both in and sit them down and just start talking to them, like, hey, and depending on what where I felt like they were in general and what they thought of their parenting, if they were checked into reality, or sometimes maybe the non-abusive parent is absent so much that they really wouldn't be aware, like kind of if I get the idea that they are aware or not, or is there a possibility that one of them doesn't know?
Or does?
Yeah, And that would determine would be step 2. I would try to I wouldn't just talk to the child and then be like, all right, like, now we're gonna go do this. I would act quickly, but hopefully
Okay.
with more information.
Last question, which you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Do you think you have a pretty good coaching detection ability? Or do you think, no, there's bad coaching, and then, yeah, it's fairly easy to deceive somebody, a therapist, if you try hard enough? What would you?
You mean for clients to coach me, or?
For a parent. Like, in other words, so it's like, I work on my kids to send them to therapy so that they will tell the therapist things that, well, one way or another will get back to whoever the powers that be are, and I pulled it off.
Mhm.
Is that fairly easy to do? And again, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to.
I don't think so. I'm a professional, which sounds weird, but I also was an athlete for 20-something years, so I've had a lot of coaches. So you see kind of either, whether it's positive or negative manipulation techniques, and sometimes there's unintentional coaching and sometimes it's very aggressive, but I wouldn't say it's very hidden.
Yeah.
But it's, again, if it's unintentional, or not very aggressive, you
Yeah.
want to be
It's not really coaching. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the overt stuff where people are trying to
Oh, yeah.
present misrepresent what's going on.
Like if it's like a 180, then I don't think that's usually a big secret to myself or anybody. Not just because it's me, but.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and this was very informative, and I appreciate you willing to go a little bit below the surface stuff that so many people will talk about, because it's not easy, and I'm grateful that you did that and that you were so willing and confidently said it too, and unapologetically, because I think that's what people really want to know and that's what they want to hear. So before we end, though, one last time, would you give them your contact information for those that would like to meet
Sure.
with Kristi Robles?
Yeah, I have a couple of offices, but you can reach all of my professional information at my professional bio website, which is KristiRobles.com at KristiRobles.com.
Thank you.
Thanks.